Hello, my name is Galaxius, and I became a professional builder in 5 days. I've always wanted to build awesome stuff in a block game, so I'm going to build a medium-sized house. This is just so you know how good I am before the 5 days. I didn't really know what I wanted to build, so I decided to just go with the flow. As you can see, the build didn't turn out too bad, but I felt sloppy, I felt lost when building, and I didn't know if this was good detailing. And I barely know any blocks. There's hundreds of blocks and items in Minecraft, and all I know to use is logs and cobblestone. In these 5 days, I want to become much more creative and start thinking outside the box. But now that you know how good I am at building, it's time to study. I watched a lot of videos and took notes on them in-game and in the Google Doc. This is so I can come back later and implement those things in my own builds. If you want to see the notes for yourself, you can check them out in the description. By the way, I didn't even use the notes after I took them. Now that I've watched those videos, it's time to make a build using the notes I took. Then, we can compare it to the build that I made earlier. Unlike the last build, I had some idea of what I wanted to do. This build was definitely going to be much bigger than the last one. I wanted to go for a medieval style with a tower. I really do like medieval builds, so I might focus on that. This took me a long time to make. It took me close to 2 hours and 20 minutes to finish the build. I used calcite, which was a block I didn't really use often. As like all beginner builds, I did stick to the wood blocks and stick to pallets I know instead of stretching out, which is something I should work on. Day 2, I was ready to get into some building. I had made these drawings of what I wanted to build. This house to the right was a house with a giant gear on it. I thought it was cool and creative, and I wanted to use the blocks like copper instead of just sticking to oak and spruce. The other drawing on the side was the one I found on Google, and I wanted to do a cherry instead of spruce. I was ready to get into building. I started off with the layout of the build, then I started on the roof. Roof is looking decent, no texture because I was planning on doing it later. After that, I had to make the main part of the building, which was the gear. I was already struggling to make a good circle. I did it in the end, but the problem was that I needed to do the pointing parts on the gear, and I was struggling a lot. I couldn't get it to look good at all. After a lot of thinking, I decided to scrap the build. I found this cool tower art on Pinterest, and I thought it would be a great idea if I built it. So, I spent 1 hour just building the framework. And then when I wanted to make it look really nice and realistic, so I used a lot of different blocks, and it didn't look good. This is really demotivating for me. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. So, I decided to move on to the cherry build I was thinking of. But I didn't want to take too long on the build, so I did kind of make it smaller. But then I also didn't have any ideas on how to use the cherry wood to make good looking builds. So in the end, I just quit again. I didn't know what to do. I felt so motivated coming home from school, and then I messed it all up. It genuinely upset me, because I wanted to build creative structures that caught the eyes of others. I didn't want to make simple old houses everyone likes to make in their survival worlds, but I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I still wanted to build something. So, I decided my best course of action was to go into build battles. And so I did. So, my recording got frozen, and I only know this when I start to edit. So, yeah, I guess you won't see the build battles. Day 3, I wasn't giving up. How could I? Why would I give up after putting 1 hour into this layout of this structure, trying my hardest to build it just to quit? So, I decided to get back into it. I scrapped the idea of making it look ultra realistic and just made it how I want my builds to be made. I tried my best to make it look similar to the tower in the image. I also wanted to use blocks that I don't regularly use. I've never used prismarine for building, and I've only used diorite on one build, and it was the one I had made on day 1. And it wasn't much diorite, not to this extent. I also used mangrove wood instead of just the average spruce. This had an interesting texture that you wouldn't get with spruce or dark oak. I also used barrels and smokers for the wooden pillars. This made it look very detailed and looked like there was an actual stone foundation that was supporting wooden pillars. I applied texture to the walls and I tried to make it look like the image. Obviously the wood in the image isn't diorite, but it does look white. And there isn't really any white wood except birch. But I thought diorite could, help me get a little more creative. I also used stone cobblestone and dead coral to make this texture at the foundation of the tower. I had also decided to make a dark prismarine frame for the roof and then put prismarine mixed with oxidized copper stairs to vary the colors to make the roof look a lot more interesting. I used oak trapdoors as the shutters to the windows and tried my best to detail the build without over exaggerating. Again, I did not do the inside of this build, but the main focus is the outside, okay? No need to do the inside. But when I started looking at the finished product, I was starting to doubt if it looked good. But the more I looked at it, the more I liked the build. I felt like I had accomplished the build I couldn't imagine building. I then started testing it out with 2 different shaders. The more I looked at it, the more I liked it. I was in shock. As I'm writing for this video, I just keep looking back at the build. I actually can't get over it. It looks good. Then I wanted to search for a builder. And I remembered I had watched Shovel 2 for One's building for 12 hours every day for a year. And I went to his Instagram and I saw this. I kept looking at his builds. There was something addicting. Build after build after build. Something came clear to me. I was nowhere near his level. But you might think that I would feel upset at this fact. They say comparison is the thief of joy. But I didn't compare myself to him. I admired him. Every build I looked at, I want to see how he did it. Like, look at this build. Look at the top. He used concrete sand to make color gradient going lighter. And it looked amazing. And then look at this one. Here he used note blocks for the roof. And even redstone lamps. His creativity was off the charts. I noticed he doesn't do anything near what I do with detailing walls. He doesn't do anything special. But his builds are still as stunning as ever. I felt like my eyes had just opened. Like my creativity on Minecraft was reborn. I started looking at the endless possibilities. The things I could do. I needed to study this man's work. I had to. Day 4, it was time to start on a build that was way better than my last one. I'm having trouble coming up with something though, so I just kept looking at Shovel's builds to see what I can come up with. I was struggling with what I wanted to build. I wanted to use red as a roof, so I decided maybe I should look to make a nether build, but after an hour and 44 minutes, it didn't look good. I didn't know what to do. Had so much motivation to build just for nothing to happen. That's when I realized that maybe I was trying to make things more complicated than they should have been. I didn't have to complicate myself by using hard blocks to use. I really wanted to use different blocks than what I usually use, but when I thought about it, it just made me frustrated. They didn't look right, and it was hard to come up with ideas to make it work with other blocks. And it just made me feel worse about my building skills, and especially my creativity. I thought I was a creative person, but now I don't know if I feel that way anymore. I needed to think, what is it that I want to build? I want to build a medieval build. I love using stone and wood, and also, medieval buildings are sick. Okay then, now I need some inspiration. Someone I can base myself off of. So, that I know what I'm doing. Then I realized it. I've been building medieval things this entire time. This is what I enjoyed building. This is what I wanted to do this entire time. I need to start work on it immediately. I'm honestly satisfied with this build. There's something off about it that I can't catch. Maybe it was the expectations I had for myself. I expected better. Even though for 4 days, most people would say my improvement was really good. There's just something I felt like I was missing. Day 5, I had to make my best build yet. But what is it? What is it that I'm gonna make? I needed to make something that was creative. I got up early in the morning before going to school and I made this layout. As you can see, I didn't really do framework with this layout. I placed every single block so I know just how it's going to look beforehand. I started off with the roof. I spent around 30 minutes just trying to figure out what gradient I wanted to do. I wanted to go back and do a blue gradient, but I've already done 2 blue roof builds. I finally found the gradient I wanted it to do and got to work. Roof's looking pretty nice, but now it's time to gradient the walls. You can see me here placing ore blocks to then replace with my gradient blocks. After doing the walls, I need to figure out how I was going to detail this build. I was very dumbfounded on how to do this. I obviously needed windows. I went with a mix of lime glass pane and yellow glass pane, and this made this really cool window. On the left side of the wall, I struggled a lot. I did not know how to detail this at all. This is what I feel like is bringing down my builds. I just don't know how to detail it well. I'll need an advanced tutorial to really get my details down, and just that alone will bring my builds up 2 levels. On detailing, I also put redstone lamps inside where the windows were, and it made this really cool effect. Plus, you can see the inside, which y'all can guess I didn't do. After I finished detailing, I needed to do something with the tower. It was bland. I decided to put a flag or a banner of sorts down. I used purple glazed terracotta and the blocks I used for the roof to make it, and it's done. I have to say, I had mixed thoughts on how this build was going to look, but I think right now, the build looks pretty good. I do feel like the mansion is actually better than this build, but I believe this wizard tower is just so much more creative. Well, I guess this is it. I obviously didn't become a pro builder, but I definitely improved. There was definitely improvement from the first build in the video, and I have to say, I'm happy with my improvement. If I were to get a guide on detailing, then I would have made much better builds. But since I'm of a lower IQ, I didn't search for any tutorials. Remember, I do have notes that I took from the videos, and that Google Doc will be in the description. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and like. If you watched this till the end, comment horrible detailing. See you guys in the next video. Peace.